You are about to hear a story that begins in one of the darkest places of the 20th century and moves toward a simple but demanding idea. A human life can endure almost anything if it is guided by meaning.
The psychiatrist Viktor Frankl wrote about this after surviving Nazi concentration camps during the Second World War. He set out to answer a question that many people ask in private moments. What keeps a person going when comfort, safety, and control have disappeared? His answer did not promise easy relief. It described a deeper strength that can grow even in hardship, and it challenged readers to discover a purpose they can live for and, if needed, suffer for. Frankl's book unfolds in 3 movements that mirror a journey. First, he describes everyday life in the camps from the inside, not as a historian listing events, but as a doctor paying attention to what suffering does to the mind and the heart. Second, he explains a form of psychotherapy he developed, which he called logotherapy. The word logos means meaning, and the therapy centers on helping people find reasons that make life worth living. Third, he returns decades later with a postscript that argues for what he calls tragic optimism, the ability to remain hopeful without denying pain, guilt, or the shortness of life. To understand why he believed meaning matters more than pleasure or power, it helps to know the other major voices he was writing alongside. Sigmund Freud described people as driven mainly by the search for pleasure and the avoidance of pain. Alfred Adler emphasized the drive for power and status. Frankl did not dismiss these forces, but he insisted that they do not explain the whole human being. People will do difficult things for an ideal, remain faithful to a promise, or choose sacrifice for someone they love. Those choices do not always feel good, and they do not always bring power, yet they make a life feel worthwhile. In Frankl's account, that sense of worth can become a lifeline when everything else is stripped away.
He begins with the shock of arriving at Auschwitz concentration camp, the moment when prisoners learned that a simple gesture from a guard could mean either life as forced labor or death within hours. He does not sensationalize this horror. He notices what it does to a person's inner world. At first there is terror, then a numbness that protects the mind from constant fear and humiliation, and after that, a slow decision to fight for dignity in small ways. People learn to look fit to avoid selection for death. They shared tiny advantages, such as an extra sip of soup ladled from the bottom of the pot. They practiced quiet rituals of faith and moments of humor that reminded them they were more than a number. These details matter because they show how meaning works. It is not an abstract slogan. It shows up in the smallest habits that say my choices still count. Frankl found 3 broad paths through which meaning can enter a life. One is through creating or accomplishing something, whether that is a piece of work, an act of service, or any task a person feels responsible to complete. For him, this meant preserving ideas for a book he had drafted before his arrest, ideas he believed could help patients long after the war. A second path is love. He held the image of his wife in his mind, even when he did not know whether she was alive. Love, he wrote, reaches beyond physical presence. It is the recognition of another person's inner world, a commitment that nourishes the one who loves as much as the one who is loved. A third path appears when suffering cannot be avoided. If pain cannot be removed, a person can still choose the attitude with which they carry it. Courage, patience, and dignity in the face of unavoidable hardship can themselves give meaning. None of these paths requires perfect conditions. Each asks for a commitment that can be renewed, even when resources are scarce.
The camp years also taught him how easily dignity can erode and how urgently it must be guarded. The system was designed to crush individuality. People were shaved, stripped, and renamed by numbers. Under this pressure, some prisoners became cruel to gain small privileges. Others remained decent, even at cost to themselves. Frankl drew a careful and uncomfortable conclusion. Human beings divide less by background or role and more by moral choice. In any group, you will find those who act with decency and those who do not. Extreme conditions do not erase this difference, they sharpen it. For someone new to these ideas, the important point is not to judge people at a distance, but to recognize that we are all capable of either path and that daily decisions can move us toward one or the other. Liberation did not bring simple relief. Bodies adjusted quickly to freedom. Minds did not. Many survivors struggled with the feeling that life outside the camp did not make sense. Some returned to empty homes. Some felt rage and an urge to harm the world that had harmed them. Frankl observed that the transition needed guidance. People had survived for a reason, only to find that the world did not always meet them with the love or justice they had imagined. In this space, the question of meaning returned again, not as a slogan, but as work to be done. How do I live now? What responsibilities do I accept? Who needs what I can uniquely give?
From these observations, he built Logotherapy, a practical method for helping patients locate meaning. The therapist does not search the distant past for hidden causes. Instead, therapist and patient look toward the future together and ask which values the patient wants to serve and which tasks only this person can fulfill. The method treats anxiety and despair not as proof of illness, but as signals that purpose has gone missing. When a person discovers a role that matters and accepts responsibility for it, the symptoms can loosen their grip. The process does not erase pain. It replaces emptiness with direction. Responsibility is central. Frankl insisted that human beings are not simply the sum of influences acting on them. We cannot control every condition, but we always retain a space of freedom in which we decide how to respond. That space can be small, it can feel fragile, yet it is real, and it is where meaning is made. When someone says, "I will keep my promise," or "I will complete this good work," or "I will carry this sorrow without harming others," that decision changes their inner life, even if their outer situation remains hard. In this view, mental health is not the absence of tension, it is the presence of a worthy tension, a pull between the person you are and the purpose you are moving toward. Years after the war, Frankl returned to these ideas and named an attitude that holds them together. He called it tragic optimism. He did not mean blind positivity. He meant hope that looks clearly at tragedy and still chooses constructive action. Tragic optimism asks 3 questions. How can I turn suffering into something that helps others or deepens my character? What can I learn from my own mistakes and guilt that would make me more honest and kind? Since life is short, what responsibilities will I embrace today rather than postpone? These questions keep a person connected to meaning, even when circumstances do not improve quickly.
If you are new to these ideas, you might wonder how they apply outside of extreme conditions. Think of a caregiver who wakes each day to tend to an ill relative. The work is exhausting, and there may be no praise, yet the caregiver finds meaning in the act itself and in the person they love. Think of a student who cannot control the economy, but can finish a degree that opens a path to service. Think of someone who has made a serious mistake, faces the harm they caused, and chooses restitution and change rather than denial. None of these choices is glamorous. All of them generate a sense that life, even when difficult, is worth living. Frankl also helps us speak more gently to one another about despair. When a person says they feel empty or adrift, they are not necessarily ill. They may be missing a reason to get up in the morning. Advice that minimizes their pain does not help. Advice that suggests a clear purpose and offers company along the way can make a difference. His work invites communities to notice and name the unique contributions of each person, because people are steadied by promises that are theirs alone to keep. At the end of the book, the author looks back and says something many elders feel but cannot always articulate. Youth dreams of possibilities. Age can point to completed meanings, to loves that were lived, to tasks that were finished, to burdens that were borne. These are not fantasies, they are real harvests that no one can take away. For beginners, this is a comforting idea. You do not need to compare your path with someone else's. You need to discern the assignments that fit your gifts and circumstances, and fulfill them as best you can.
This story does not hide suffering, and it does not glamorize it. Instead, it shows that a person is more than what happens to them. Meaning can be created through work that serves others, through love that recognizes the inner world of another, and through the choice to carry unavoidable pain with courage. Pleasure and power have their place, but they are poor anchors in a storm. Purpose, freely chosen, is stronger. It will not remove all fear, yet it can reduce fear to its true size. It can move a person to act, to care, and to endure with dignity.